Okay, hi everybody. I'm Nancy, a compulsive overeater. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day off the gray sheet. I write them down. I call them into a sponsor. Don't eat anything in between, and abstinence has saved my life and given me a life. I am a grateful compulsive overeater, and just to start where we're at, 64 years old. After a lot of dieting, I came into these rooms in 1991. I ate and cried 11 and a half years in regular OA, a year in Gray Sheet before I got the gift. And January 18th, I celebrated 19 years of solid Gray Sheet abstinence, one day at a time, weighing and measuring no matter what. And, when I was eating, being abstinent for one day or one meal was a chore. And I never expected, getting 30 days, getting 90 days. I mean, the infancy, and I'm still, I don't know, like I'm young in this program. It doesn't mean I couldn't go out there. And so I do today what I did when I came in. And just briefly, I come from, well, first I think, today is a Monday, it's a day for beginning a diet, like again, because I used to do my heaviest binging on weekends. And then Wednesday is weigh day. And, I used to cringe. I remember when I was in school and they would call, you get weighed and they'd call your weight across the hall. And I was tall for my age and I dreaded it. And I don't think I was that heavy, but just I was bigger than the other kids. And, I don't care about weigh day. My weight, I've been really lucky. It hasn't gone up. I'm like plus or minus 5 pounds. And my clothes fit today and they wear out. Before I used to have muumuu clothes, I had clothes that could expand and when I would get fat or, I never wanted to buy any new clothes because, I was going to lose that weight in like 2 days, and that never happened. But anyways, like a lot of people in program, it's not a requirement. I come from good addictive stock. My father was an alcoholic. My mom was a compulsive overeater. And that seed was planted. Somebody got into AA when I was 13, and he was just in a lot of pain. We had just moved. We moved a lot around when I was a little kid, and we always moved in the middle of the year. And my father he was probably bipolar. Well, he was bipolar, and he took his life. And he thought the problem was gone. And like I had been on diets with my parents, partly because my sister was like, well, she wasn't even a year older than me. We're 9.5 months apart. I was preemie, but I was 2 or 3 inches taller than her. She might have been 10 pounds heavier than me, but I thought I was too big. And when I look back at pictures, I wasn't. But we used to diet together. My parents did the extreme diet, so it was like, you're either very good or you're very bad. And I hate those words, but that's kind of what we did. And so my dieting or my binging or getting heavy really didn't happen until, age 13 when I started developing or after my dad died. And then we moved to Massachusetts, and that was another change. And, I know a lot of people, there are people that don't have it, come from this disease in their family. They don't have the designer genes, and that's okay, or it comes later. I don't know when it happens. And I spent a lot of my early years trying to understand why I ate, and I read a lot of self-help books, and a lot of good that did. Well, I buy the books, and I don't think I read that many of them. And, always trying to figure out what the answer was. And if I was thin, life would be good. And I never talked about my feelings. And, it was just like, if I were thin, life would be good. That was simple. That was what I expected. And I was a really shy kid. I hid in the background, and I was considered uncoordinated. And well, I don't want to go back there. Anyways, I just, I had the fear, doubt, and insecurity, and I was afraid of my own shadow, and it was really hard growing up. And food comforted me. As crazy as it was, food calmed me. It medicated me, and I did a lot of stealing food, or did it with babysitting and all the things that other people have said. It was like why can't I just be normal? And I did tons of dieting, and I did, Weight Watchers, and I did diet workshop for teens, and it was really great when I was on a diet. But as soon as I got off, I'd stay thin for maybe 2 seconds, and I'd be back up. Maybe sometimes might be like a little bit longer, or I'd start to get thin clothes, and then of course those never last. I could wear them that long, and it was just really hard. I mean, I remember, well, today I went into a coffee shop, and first of all, I was amazed. Back in the old days, coffee shops, they just sold coffee. And there was this contraband in there, sugar and flour just dancing. But the woman behind the counter was, they had to wear the same shirt and uniform, and she was busting out of it. And it just made me, remember back in the days. Like I remember one year, and it was winter, and after my mom bought me my winter coat, I think this was junior high, and I walked to school with these other kids. I couldn't zip it, and I used to wear it, open, like that. I was a cool kid. I had my zip, coat open. Or one time when my weight was going up, and I remember getting my hair cut, and the wrap didn't really fit around, so it was like really, not that I had much cleavage, but there was just this big opening, and I just felt so ashamed in this person's chair. Like, never could I ask that, do you have a bigger size? I mean, it was just horrible, but I couldn't stop eating. And I think today, I was really a depressed kid. I spent a lot of time home alone in my room, a lot of time sleeping. I missed out on life, and it was really, and I never felt good enough. And it's something I still struggle with today. Like, am I good enough? Do I deserve a space? Because in my family, there wasn't really, there was a lot of chaos. And my father ended up taking his life when I was 13. We just said he had a heart attack. My mother died of lung cancer when she was 57. She was tall and gorgeous, and her figure was her, and her looks were her identity. And my sister and I, we felt like the ugly ducklings, and then I'd say, well, at least we have nice hair, and then my older sister and my brother from my mom's first marriage came back, and we're just, I think everybody doing the best they can. I mean, today I have a lot more compassion, and so I found these rooms. I found regular OA when in 91, and that was really, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. And a friend of mine, actually my best friend from when I lived in Chicago, told me about OA. And years later, when I asked her about it, she never got a sponsor. I mean, I think I came in when, well, I can't do the math now, how old I was, I forgot. But she said, oh, when you're ready, you'll do it. And, how it transformed her life. She never had a sponsor. She never had a food plan. And anyways, I came in and I struggled. And I got lost going to my first meeting, and it was in my town. Like, I kept on, I don't know how many months it took me to get to a meeting, because I didn't know you had to go to more than one meeting a week. But I am grateful for the disciplines I got in regular OA. We had to go to a meeting a day. We called in our sponsor. Back then, we used to talk to our sponsor for 15 minutes. God knows what I talked about. We certainly didn't talk about the food or feelings. I mean, and what I thought was like, oh, I used to have that people would share, and this is my memory. It's probably not true. People would say, oh, I had this horrible life. I was fat, and now I'm thin, and everything's wonderful. That's like what I heard, when people qualified. That was probably not all that was going on. But we did have food plans, and I did talk to sponsors, and we would synchronize our watches. We had to call them exact time, and there were a lot more rules there. Like, I kept thinking, like, oh no, not GreySheet. That's really hard. But I had to do certain things, and I had all kinds of sponsors. I had tough love sponsors. I had gentle sponsors. I had one sponsor who made me commit my day to her because she said I did too much. I mean, I'm like such a slug now. I'm like, really? And at the end, when she said she couldn't sponsor me anymore, I said, I always hated committing my day to you. She's like, how come you never said anything? Like, what business is it of her? She'd say, oh, that's not abstinent behavior. That's too much. But I think now, today, having some perspective, it's like, I have to keep my abstinence first. If I'm pushing too much in, I have to be careful not to get too hungry and only tired. And so, that there was probably some wisdom in those words. Well, the first people I heard, I don't remember her name, but I can picture this cute little redhead, and I was like, I don't want to go to a meeting every day. I don't want to do this. I don't want to, like I couldn't commit food unless I had it in my house, and I couldn't do this. And we had to call 3 people, and we had to read the big book, and I had to do quiet time and this. And she's like, well, it sounds like what you're doing now is a lot of work. And I'm like, no, it isn't, because I was used to it. I was used to binging. I was used to, living in misery. I heard, 1 bite is too much, 1,000 bites aren't enough. Anything you put before your program, you lose. I mean, there was a lot of wisdom in those rooms, and it works for, thank you. It works for, and that worked for a lot of people, and it works, but it didn't work for me. And we had to have 90 days of absence before we could share. I could read a tool, but I couldn't talk. And so, I was always like, woe is me. I'm the only one that can't get it. Poor me, like everybody else. And then when I like lose weight or gain weight, I'd go to different meetings. People would say, are you new? And I'm like, no, I'm just a failure. I would go to meetings later. I'd leave early. Or, I mean, there's somebody in this program now that we were crying outside in the parking lot, because we were both struggling. I mean, and today we're both abstinent. There's nothing more painful than knowing there's a solution and having like a glimpse of it, and then being totally out of control and powerless. And, it's that first step. I am powerless over food. My life is unmanageable. I definitely could do the unmanageable part, and I definitely kept sinking lower and lower. But it was, because I'd been on diets, I don't know. I mean, I thought I was powerless sometimes, but then I would always forget, or I'd get a feeling, or there'd always be a reason to eat. So, but I am definitely powerless. And, it's a miracle that I haven't eaten compulsively for a little over 19 years, I mean, there may be at times like I don't lick my spoon, between measurements. I don't eat the crumbs in a pan. I don't, make food decisions on my own. If my scale doesn't work, I get another scale. If I'm somewhere and the scale breaks, I take one home. I, call ahead, I plan, prepare, protect, pray, all the things that you have taught me, people in the rooms have taught me how to do it. So when I came into Abstinent, I didn't want to be here, and I followed other people from regular OA, and I didn't like people, and I didn't think people liked me, and really I just don't think I liked myself, because the food it was such a depressant for me, and my self-hate was just like really flying high. And when I came in, okay, my highest weight was 250 pounds in 1998. And I was weighing and measuring with exception in OA. So I was going to meetings, kind of. Well, actually, no, I was pretty much going to meetings. I think that kept me alive. But, and then when I came here, I was only 20 pounds heavier than I am now, but it could have been 400 pounds. And the insanity in my head was like, well, I've never thrown up, but maybe I can do that now. Like I've heard other tricks to do it because I want to fit in my jeans, but I want to eat everything in sight. And thank you, God, I didn't. And finally, I got that gift of willingness that no matter what happens, I'm going to be abstinent. And people really, they held me up. They supported me. They listened to me cry and cry. My first year, all I did was cry and weigh and measure, go to meetings. And actually, I did travel. Like, they say bedroom slippers, but I got the chance to go to Disney with my sister and her family, and then I went to Israel with my brother and his family, and I was like, how do you do it? People like, not if you're going to be abstinent, but how you're going to be abstinent. I've traveled, I've done service, I dated, I got married, I've had some real big challenges with family, like a lot of us. I had a sister that's my sisters are like drama and trauma. One of them, I feel like, was in the hospital in and out for like 3 months. I thought she was going to die. That was this past year. That was like the latest drama. I recently fractured my wrist, I mean, today I can say, well, it was a little fracture. If I had been heavier, it would have been a serious fracture. I went to Florida on vacation. I came back, I got COVID. I feel like, thank God it was like COVID light. I mean, if I was in the disease, I would be doom and gloom. First, I went step 14. course. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, or like I would say, oh my God, poor me, and just, wow, I went by quickly. So just the last thing, so just, thinking about my day, which was probably a little bit more scheduled than usual. I woke up, I recently retired, so I was taking care of a friend's dog. That's my new like hobby. I do some dog sitting, and then I walked him. Then I had my sponsor calls, my breakfast. I had started doing a study group, and then I had my lunch while I was listening to the Gray Sheet meeting. So that was two Gray Sheet meetings. Then I went to the coffee shop to get coffee for a relative who's moving. So I was helping her pack and go through stuff. And then after that, while I'm there, I get a call because friends of ours had to run to Florida because her mother's dying. But I go pick up something for her that, today I'm credible. Like I can do things for other people. And then I had my third delicious weighed and measured meal exactly, as I made my lunch for tomorrow, because tomorrow is I take care of my grandson, it's Tuesdays with Theo, and I have to plan tomorrow to get up really early and shovel. Like I can get out there and shovel, I mean, when I was really heavy, my knees couldn't bend. Now I can do like knee bends.
That's time.
And I had an exercise class.
Okay.
So it was a good day. And so I thank you all that together we do this. It's a we program.